Hey gang, we are in the Pasadena, California area today, Altadena, and we're at Mountain View Cemetery here, Mountain View Cemetery and Mausoleum. We're going to be going to one of the mausoleums to see someone that was very infamous story of the Roaring Twenties in Chicago. And her name is Belva, and some of you may have heard of her. She was one of two notorious women that was serving in the Cook County Jail waiting for their trial, along with another one. And there was a Chicago Tribune reporter at the time. She was also a playwright. Maurine, we'll talk about her. She would get in to interview these women. She would get in, like the reporters of the day, like Dorothy Kilgallen was going to get to Jack Ruby. She got to Leopold and Loeb, the killers of young Bobby Franks. But anyway, she wrote that show, musical and play called Chicago, and this woman and the other woman, it's a different story paralleling. They were in the jail. These Chicago women in the 20s, these flappers they inspired that musical, that play. So we're going to be talking about Belva today, and we're going to walk from here towards the mausoleum. And the mausoleum is like tiny. It's like two little rooms. So I thought we would just kind of walk around out here while I tell you the story. And quite a story it is. This is a beautiful cemetery. It kind of reminds me, we see a lot of memorial parks out here in the LA area and out west, but this cemetery reminds me of the cemeteries out east, Chicago and even New York and otherwise. The old gravestones, beautiful. So if you go back to 1884, Belva, that's when she was born, Belva Eleanora Gaertner. And speaking of Chicago and Illinois, she was born in Litchfield, which is down south, central Illinois, down towards Springfield, state capital. Little town there. Her parents, Mary Jane and Charles Gaertner. Well, Belva sure wouldn't stay way down south in those farm fields of Litchfield. She would end up in downtown Chicago, the Roaring Twenties, like I was saying. So let's focus on those wild times. Those Roaring Twenties. Our story really picks up when Belva was down on the south side there. She was a twice divorced cabaret singer. Ever since she was 18, she was doing singing and dancing, and people would know her then. Her stage name was Belle Brown. Now on March 11th, 1924, she was 39 years old. She was aged, kind of a has-been, but she was still styling, wearing those fine furs and fancy hats, downtown action. And it was that night she was hanging out with another person on the rowdy south side. Speakeasies were just closing down for this Tuesday night, and it was just after 1 a.m. There were two cops walking their beat, and they heard two gunshots. It was near a car, so they ran to this car where the sound came from, and what did they see? They see a man slumped over the wheel. Blood all over the place. Well, it would be determined the next morning that he had one gunshot wound. He was shot through the right side of his face, bullet exiting his left ear. There was a bottle of gin on the floor there and a gun right on the seat next to him. Well, the victim's name was a man named Walter Law. He's a car salesman, and he was married. He had one child, and what was really odd is the car didn't even belong to him. belonged to Belva Gaertner. Why was her name Gaertner? Well, that was her last husband, and it was parked right in front of her apartment building. Very interesting. Well, it wasn't hard to find Belva. They went right upstairs to question her. They knocked on the door, and when the door opened, there she stood. She was wearing a robe. Said, "Can we come in?" "Sure, come on in," she said. First thing they noticed, they looked to their left, and there on the floor is a whole pile of clothes. Right on top, there's a dress and a fur coat, both covered in blood. Police asked her where she had been that night. "And did you know a man named Walter?" She said, "Oh, yes, I know Walter. We were together last night. We were drinking. We were having a great time. We both had a lot of gin, and I don't remember anything. Nothing." "Well, what about that blood on those clothes laying there?" "Oh, I don't remember. I don't know what that is." "What about the gun we found in your car?" "Oh, yes, that's mine. That's my gun. I carry it because I'm afraid of getting robbed." Well, that was enough for the police. She was immediately taken into custody, suspicion of murder. Well, the next day came, and tougher questions were now being asked by the police. They had her under the bright light. And they were saying, "Come on, what's the story?" So she came up with this story, you won't believe it. She said, "Well, and by the way, this was like an affair going on." She's like, "Well, we were talking, and when we got to my apartment, we were talking about robbery. We were talking about how dangerous it is out here. And I said to Walter, I said, 'What would you do if someone came right now and robbed us? How would you handle it? Would you handle it?' And he said, 'I don't know. I think I would handle it pretty good.' And she said, 'Oh, I think I would do good too. Let's have a contest. I've got a gun, and let's shoot at each other. And the person that gets shot first loses.' And if, I'll shoot first, and if I miss, then you get a shot at me." That's the way the game was working. And the police are, you gotta just imagine the police are just shaking their head. They're like, "What?" So she gets through with this story, and the police are like, "What happened?" "Well, who got shot?" Right? They're setting her up. She's like, "Oh, I don't remember anything. Remember I told you? I don't remember anything." But she remembered that. So, well, they're like, "Okay, you're charged. We're going to have a trial here." And there was a trial. Now, her husband, this rich industrialist that she was married to and divorced from, he was backing her with the money. And this trial, you could tell, she had a big defense team, and she had this big name. And at the time, it was like the pretty women, quote unquote, were getting off. There were a lot of poisoners too, and if you were pretty, you would get off. And if you weren't, you wouldn't get that public sympathy. Remember, I did that one episode in Niles about Tilly, the killer, the poisoner. She wasn't pretty, so she was convicted. That's how it was in those days. I kid you not. So William Gaertner was the industrialist, and he was not going to let her go down. And sure enough, the trial commences, and what do you think Belva's defense was? Well, Walter must have killed himself. He shot himself. He shot himself with the gun. And the jury believed her. They even had a witness on the prosecution side and said that he was warned by Walter, you know, his friend Walter. It's like, this woman's gonna kill me. And, you know, the last time I was over at her place, we went upstairs and she like held me at knife point. She wouldn't let me leave. I'm not going up there again. So you can imagine that night. She was like, let's go upstairs. He's like, no, I'm not going. So she shot him. So anyway, the trial's going on, and you know, the jury, after all that, and you know, it's like, oh, he committed suicide. The jury believes it. And she is not guilty. Now, Walter's wife was there, and she lost it. She right in court. She just said, there is no justice. She should have justice, just like why should Walter pay? And she doesn't pay. No justice. So right in the courtroom, there was a big scene. But she got off. And what's unbelievable is I think she was still married to William Gaertner at the time. And a year later, she was drunk, and then he caught her with another man. And for that, she threatened him with a knife. So he's like, I better not piss her off. Okay. So they go to Europe, they come back, and finally this guy dies, William Gaertner. They were living up in Wilmette, you know, North Shore of Chicago. It's where the Sheds live. Well, they lived to the north in Lake Forest, but all the rich people lived up that way. So when he died, she ended up taking probably what money was left and came out here to Pasadena to live with her sister Ethel. And that's what happened. She lived out her days here. She died of natural causes right out here in the Pasadena area. And she lived to a ripe old age. She got away with murder, Chicago style. And she is right up ahead here. We're gonna go right past this vault to the mausoleum, which is right there, right now. Okay, we are at the chapel now, which is right near the front entry. Beautiful structure, but it's locked. Sorry guys, cannot get in here. I would love to, but the columbarium is open, and I did find their niches. Very small columbarium here on the left, the locked doors of the chapel. All right, let's go inside. There's only 2 rooms in here. You have this room right up front here. But the room we're looking for is up here. This room. Much bigger room. And there you have all the niches of all these people. But if you're looking for Belva, she's right over here by the corner with her sister. Right here. Belva E. Gaertner, 1884, 1965. Melinda Ethel, 1888. Her younger sister, 1975. Well, there's Belva. What's left of her. Yeah, I normally leave some flowers, but not for this woman. She killed this guy, you know, this young guy. He was a father. He had a child. Yeah, he was wrong, wasn't doing the right thing. He was playing around, but you know, you kill a guy. I mean, this is a nutcase. You were a nutcase your whole life. Narcissistic, probably, and then just over the top, out of control. Just out of control. So that's how we're going to leave this. The out of control woman. Belva, if you want to come see her, here she is. I thought I'd give you a look. And with that, we are headed out of here. No RIP. Uncool. She don't like you. Don't like her, but it is a Chicago story, so I thought I would share it with you. All right, gang, we'll see you on the next one.